Hi there. You've reached S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. Today I'm going to talk about three very powerful testimonies of three men who came to Jesus. The first one's going to be Nabeel Qureshi, a former Muslim who had a really amazing dream. The second one's going to be David Wood, a former atheist and a person who went to jail for trying to kill his dad, a psychopath who came to Jesus. And the third one is going to be Rowe, the leader of Sentinel Apologetics. So here we go.
And as Oz Guinness says, someone who works with Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, he says, comparison, contrast is the mother of clarity. And when I compared Islam to Christianity, I realized Christianity came way on top. Now, this is when my world fell into crisis. Because I couldn't just all of a sudden accept the gospel. If I were to do that, then I would be bringing tremendous shame upon my family. And Muslim families often come from honor-shame backgrounds. So to give you an idea, everything my grandfather did, everything my great-grandfather did in preaching Islam was to build honor and pride in the community. And if their great-grandson became Christian, then it's as if I leveled all the honor they ever gained in their entire lives. And it's not just me who's going to be looked at with shame from my family. My family, my mother and father, who spent their whole lives pouring into me, if I become a Christian, I'm bringing shame to them, and I drag their reputation through the mud, and now their lives are destroyed because of my decision. And so these kinds of considerations make it extremely difficult for a Muslim to consider becoming a Christian. On top of that, there is something called the law of apostasy in Islam. Traditionally speaking, and to be a little bit more specific, all four schools of traditional Sunni Islam and all three major schools of traditional Shia Islam teach that if you leave Islam, you can be killed in various circumstances. They disagree on the circumstances, but they all agree that it can happen. And so a Muslim has to think about maybe giving up his social life for sure, and maybe even destroying his family's social life, and then maybe even giving up your life itself because of the law of apostasy. And then if you're wrong about all this, the Quran says you're going to hell. Everything, literally, is balanced. And it makes it extremely difficult for someone to leave Islam. So at this point, I fell to my knees and started asking God in the daily prayers, outside of the daily prayers, I'm asking God, I need you to reveal yourself to me. I have looked, and it looks like Islam is not true. Please forgive me for saying that. And it looks like Christianity might be true. Please forgive me for saying that. Can you tell me who you are? Now, to give you a little bit of understanding and insight into Islamic culture, the veil is not torn down the way Christians believe. According to Islam, the veil is still up. Muslims don't commune with God. Even the prophets didn't commune with God. The prophets spoke to angels who spoke to God. So Muslims aren't ready to just receive information from God. They're not of that kind of status. They don't think so anyway. But there's one way that Muslims expect to hear directly from God. Anyone know? Dreams. Muslims believe that they can receive dreams from God for guidance. And so they ask God for dreams for guidance. There's a special type of prayer called Salat Istikhara, where Muslims specifically get on their knees and say, God, guide me through dreams. My dad chose his jobs based on those. My sister chose her husband based on dreams. We decided when to move based on dreams. And by the way, some of these dreams became prophetically true. For example, my mother, when she got married to my father, she had a dream that she was planting 4 seeds in the ground. And 2 of those seeds grew up into trees, and 2 did not. She goes to my aunt and she says, I just had this dream. And my aunt says to her, blessed are you, for God has already told you that you will be pregnant 4 times, and you will have 2 children and 2 miscarriages. Fast forward 17 years, that's exactly what happened. I've got some creepy stories I could share with you, but we don't have enough time. This happens very regularly. Now, why does it happen? It could be a variety of reasons. Is it God giving the dreams? Is it something else giving the dreams? It could be a variety of things. That's not my point. My point is that Muslims expect to hear from God based on dreams, and on the face of it, they have good reason to believe that. And so I asked God for dreams and visions, and I ultimately received 1 vision and 3 dreams. I'll give you the second dream because that was the one that was most powerful for me. I wanted something very clear, and God gave me a very clear dream. By the way, at this point, it's been about 4 years since David and I started discussing Christianity and Islam. In this dream, I'm standing at the threshold of a narrow door. This door is just wide enough to fit me, just tall enough to fit me. And there's some depth to it, maybe 5 or 7 feet. It's made of brick, an archway kind of. As I look into that doorway, there's a room set with a feast. Round tables, people sitting at this feast. The food has been put out. People are in fine clothes. It's like a wedding feast, and they're about to start eating, but they haven't started yet. They're all looking that direction. They're waiting for the owner or the speaker or whoever to come and start this feast. And I want to get into that room because I know that that room is heaven, but I can't because at the other end of the doorway is my friend David. He's also sitting and waiting. He's not looking at me, but he's kind of blocking the way. I can't get past him. And so I say to him in the dream, I thought we were going to eat together. And he says, you haven't responded. And in the dream, I knew that I had to respond to David's invitation in order to get into heaven. But here's where it gets crazy. When I woke up, I called David and I asked him, what do you think this dream means? And it was the first time I heard someone's eyes roll over the phone. And he says, Nabeel, this dream is so clear, I don't need to interpret it for you. Just go to the Bible. And I said, what do you mean? He says, go to Luke chapter 13. Now, David knew his scriptures, by the way, and he had given me a Bible, a study Bible. And when I turned to Luke chapter 13, it said in big, bold letters, the narrow door. Now, the moment I saw that, my heart skipped a beat because that was the most powerful symbol in my dream. And I started reading. I'm going to paraphrase it for you, and basically here's what it says. Jesus was going through the towns and villages preaching the good news, and the disciples asked him, Lord, are many going to be saved? And he said, make every effort to enter through that narrow door. For many, I tell you, will try, and few will be able. And you will see people sitting inside at the wedding feast of heaven. Make every effort to enter before the owner comes and closes that door.
Amen. So that's one powerful testimony, and we're going to go to some more. This is David Wood.
Why did I blindly accept the extraordinary claim that life arose spontaneously from non-life without demanding some very good evidence? Second, I found out how Jesus' apostles died. Most of them went to their bloody deaths claiming that they had seen him risen from the dead. My explanation for the origin of Christianity had always been that the apostles made up a story so that they could spread his message, but now my explanation wasn't making sense. If you're willing to die for something, you have to believe it. When a terrorist blows himself up, he's obviously sincere. So the disciples, the apostles, had to believe what they were dying for, but this means that they were convinced that they had seen Jesus risen from the dead. Now, usually when someone is willing to lay down their life for something, it's for an ideology that they got from someone else, and that ideology could be true or false. The disciples were dying for something that they saw. What could have convinced so many different people that they had all seen a resurrected man? I could explain one witness by saying he's crazy, but all of them? Something was going on here, and I had to figure it out, but I couldn't come up with any explanation for why they had that level of confidence other than they actually saw him. Third, I started worrying that Jesus might actually be better than me. Now, if you're not a complete moral relativist or maybe one of the new atheists, it's probably obvious to you that Jesus is better than me. But I wasn't the clearest thinker on moral issues back then, so getting my mind around this was very difficult. Here's the problem that emerged. I had two beliefs that just didn't go together. On the one hand, I believe that human beings are lumps of cells, meaningless lumps of cells, and that everything we did was pointless. At the same time, I believe that I was the best, most important person in the entire world. How is it possible to be the best, most important, worthless lump of cells? If there were to be some sort of best person, that would require something like a standard of good, and that would require something like God, and then someone like Jesus would be better than me. So my beliefs were breaking down at the foundational level. And once the foundations start crumbling, everything starts coming down. I went from believing that I was the best person in the world to thinking that I was the worst person in the world. And in a moment of clarity, it all just hit me, thinking, I'm a guy who once choked my friend until bloody foam came out of his mouth. I hit him with a shovel because he disagreed with me. I don't even remember what it was about. I used to watch my mom's boyfriend beat her, and I wouldn't lift a finger to help her. Not because I was scared. I was 200 pounds and I had a gun. I could have stopped it at any time. I just didn't care. And I was proud of the fact that I didn't care. I thought about what I'd done to my family, what I was doing to myself. They brought me food every single day, and I was starving to death because I wouldn't eat it. There were other starving people in the world, but at least they could think straight. I sat there thinking about torturing people. My skin was turning yellow. I was scratching myself bloody. What sense did it make to think that I'm the best at anything? When I was thinking about that situation, I just thought, it feels like I've just been stomped relentlessly into the ground. And when I thought that, I started comparing it with a little hospital stay about 1.5 years earlier. I got into a fight with 7 guys. I'm not saying that to be tough. They won that one. I got one of them. He hit me with a gun, and I hit him with these guns. And then his 6 friends got on me and got me on the ground, and then took turns soccer kicking me in the head. But I was comparing that to the situation I was in. I was thinking, I was okay the next day. I had scratches on my neck. I was dizzy walking around. I had my arm in a sling, but I was okay. Fighting 7 guys is a joke compared to what I was going through in that cell. I feel like I've just been stomped into the ground. And when I thought that I felt like I'd been stomped into the ground, I had another flashback. One night I was walking home from a friend's house and a storm hit. There was rain was so bad I could barely see. Lightning was striking all over the place, and I looked up and mockingly said, "Oh, is that supposed to scare me? If you want me to believe in you, better come down here and make me believe." I wasn't serious, but given my circumstances in the jail, I had to start wondering if God had taken it seriously. That normally wouldn't have been an option. I didn't think like that. But since my entire worldview was crumbling, I wasn't in a position to dismiss alternatives. But there's a problem. If there was a God involved in all of this, if right and wrong weren't merely useful fictions, I was in all kinds of trouble. Not just for what I had done, but for what I was. How is the worst person in the world going to ever do the right thing? There's no magic switch that I can flip and, oh, now I care about other people. So how was I going to do anything right? And then it hit me that there are 2 possibilities. Either I'm violent and selfish and uncaring, and that's just the way things are, or there's someone who can help people like me. Either I'm all messed up and that I just had to live with that, or there was someone who could deal with this sort of thing. And when you start thinking like that, I'd say you're about 2 inches away from becoming a Christian, because when we ask ourselves, who out of anyone ever, who had the ability to take psychologically, spiritually, and morally shattered people and give them new life, we get a list of 1. You get a list of 1. There's 1 person on the list. He's the one who said, "I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." I didn't know if Jesus was who he claimed to be, but I knew that it was Jesus or nothing. It was Jesus or nothing. If anyone has God's stamp of approval. It's the guy who rose from the dead.
Amen. So that was another powerful testimony. So we're going to go to a third one in just a moment. So this is Rowe of Sentinel Apologetics.
Jewish prophecy is such that they were looking for patterns, and that's how God works in the scriptures. There's you have to recognize patterns. The Jews look for signs. And so here's what I find interesting. When you finally then get, say, to the book of Daniel, with the Babylonian context, then that leading into the so-called, the Second Temple period, basically, from the 500s BC onwards. Notice that everything has now led to the fulcrum point, geopolitically, for this particular Messiah to arise just at the right time, before 70 AD. And it had to happen like that, because if the temple were destroyed, then there's no meaning and purpose for anything that you see in the New Testament in regards to the temple, Judaism, the theology of Judaism, the Gentile context.
So the bottom line right here, as he's mentioning, is there's some fulfilled prophecies in the Old Testament. One of them is Malachi 3:1 that said the anointed one would show up in the temple. And Daniel also prophesied about the anointed one and his timing. And so when Jesus arrived and when he came to the earth, he came in a situation within a period of 18 months where, when he was born between 3 and 2 BC, where the stars had aligned in really amazing ways. And so people who study astronomy today have been able to map out exactly the situation in the sky at the time of Jesus's birth. And it's pointed to things like the Star of Bethlehem. There's a lot of really great stuff with the book and with Jesus. And so these three testimonies are pretty amazing, but I've got a little bit more. I have my own testimony. One day I was sitting on a plane next to a pastor. Out of a coincidence, I had prayed to God to give me signs of the truth. I really wanted to know whether or not Christianity was true, and I wanted to know whether Jesus was just a mere moral teacher. I came upon this pastor who directed me to C.S. Lewis's adult books. I was very familiar with his children's books, and I had told the pastor that I wanted to write fiction like C.S. Lewis had done for children. I had 2 young sons at the time. I still do, but they were very young at that point. And when I read the Mere Christianity, I came upon this particular line, which I found opened my eyes completely. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on a level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. That particular verse shook me out of the very weak form of Christianity I had been experiencing for the beginning years of my life. But then other arguments also presented themselves. Jesus' apostles were doubtful, and Paul was persecuting Christians. During his ministry, his half-brothers, including James, tried to stop it. They thought he had gone mad. During Jesus' ministry, his apostles didn't understand what he meant by rebuilding the temple, his body, after it had been destroyed after 3 days. On the road to Emmaus, Jesus opened eyes to the prophecies. As Rob had mentioned, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and the prophecies were that Jesus would appear in the temple. So there was a very narrow period of time in which Jesus was to appear on the earth. During Jesus' crucifixion, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. He and the other male apostles, save for John, went into hiding to avoid a similar death. Saul and Paul was busy persecuting Christians. He stood at the feet of St. Stephen when Stephen was being stoned. But then we have a very early creed that even agnostics and atheists have admitted was written within a few years of Jesus' resurrection. It came about from the early Christians. Paul wrote it in 1 Corinthians 15, and here's what it says. For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me also as one abnormally born. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you'll like, subscribe, and do come again. Bye-bye.